Hey, and welcome to the Joie Miller podcast. I'm Joie Miller, and I'm so excited that you tuned in today. And I'm excited to share a message with you on finding your niche. It's a teaching on how to find that thing that only you can do. And so if you've ever felt like you're good at a lot of things, but you don't know what to focus on, this podcast is for you. Maybe you feel like you're scattered in a million different directions, or there's many paths that you can take, but you want to know going into this new space of this year is, what am I specifically to focus on this year? And so it's more than just, when you think of a niche, a lot of times I think it's a business term, or, a lot of the business world talks about a niche like your genius zone or your strength zone. And I want you to get outside of the box of thinking that's just for business or branding, to really apply that to your season that you're living in now. A great life hack is to take great leadership principles that we compartmentalize and think it's just for CEOs or working moms or entrepreneurs, and we ignore those things and say that's not for me. If we start to take the borders off of what's business, what's life, and we just run our whole life like it is our job, like it's our career, it's our calling, then we start to use principles that the world is excelling at in areas of business and operation, and we apply them to our lives, and we say, wait, this just isn't for the CEO. This is for like the stay-at-home mom. This is for, the woman that's trying to figure it out, what's next in my life. This is for me. And so finding your niche is for you, finding that specific thing that you feel called to. So it's not just for business. It's just not for brand, but really it's for alignment, clarity, and calling. The title of today's message is Where Clarity Meets Calling, and that's where your niche or your strength zone lies. So it's not something that you force. It's not something that you give a title to. Really, your niche is something that you just discover. And we're going to walk through that because I feel like we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to have the perfect niche or the perfect strength zone. And we're going to unpack some of that. This past year, I ended my year. I was on a retreat with some of my ladies from the women's ministry, and we had some time just for some leadership sessions, and we talked about several things. And I felt like one of the things the Lord put on my heart to share with my leadership team was direction for 2026. And so I prayed about it, and I shared a message with them, and it was called this. It was said, I feel like the Lord's saying, if 2026 had a chapter title, like a new chapter title, it would be called The Year That Everything Got Easier. And it was directly connected to that word that I told them I felt like the Lord was speaking, was connected to the teaching that I'm going to share with you today of finding your strength zone, that everything's going to get easier because you operate in your lane of grace. And so what does that look like this year? And so I want to open up this teaching. The next 2 weeks, I'm going to be sharing on 2 keys that I believe are going to cause that word to come forth in our lives this year, that everything just got easier. It's because we do these steps. And one of them, instruction from the Lord, is find your lane of grace. Find what your divine calling is for this specific year. So if you've ever felt pulled in too many directions, if you feel like you don't want to box yourself in, right? That's where I was at the end of last year. At that same retreat, we had a leadership teaching. An amazing woman got on and taught us leadership, finding where your passion and your proximity and your purpose all collide. And I asked the Lord, I said, am I in my lane of grace? On the heels of what I felt like he was speaking. And with that question, he shifted my attention to a different focus that I was supposed to have going into 2026. And I didn't like it. I didn't want to be boxed in. But I learned that whenever you follow God, that's when things get easier. That's when the grace flows in your life. So if that's you, I was there. I didn't want to be boxed in to one specific thing. But if you feel like that, if you're afraid to choose the wrong thing, if you've ever asked, why does this seem easy and so clear for everyone else, right? I've been in that place. Like, why does this seem like it's a struggle bus for me, but it's easy for everybody else? If any of those sound like you, today's podcast is going to help you out. We're going to talk about finding our niche or our niche, however you say it. We're going to say niche. So let's first start by defining what is a niche. What is a niche in our lives? Let's first define what it's not. It's not a tiny box that limits us, that we have to stay in. Many times we don't want to commit to something because we don't want to be labeled that for the rest of our lives, right? You don't want to be like, you don't want to sell uh, pampered chef because you don't want to be the pampered chef lady. You don't want to sell Tupperware because you don't want to be the Tupperware lady or the Mary Kay lady. We don't want to be labeled as something our entire life, so we're afraid to commit ourselves fully to that thing. So that's not what a niche is. It's not a label that you wear for the rest of your life, and it's not a trend that you choose. It's not like, oh, you know what? Everyone else is doing this in 2026, so I'm going to jump on the bandwagon of what everyone else is finding success in. That's not going to be your niche. You might find a little bit of success in that. It might be fun for a season, but that's not truly your purpose and your niche. It's not going to give you fulfillment, and we're going to talk about that. And it's not a title that you choose. And this is so important. This is where I was getting it wrong because I was trying to choose my niche. I was looking at all the things I like to do, all the things I was currently doing, and I was basically saying, God, this is it. This is what I want you to bless the most in my life. And it took the Lord bringing awareness to me of that you're good at that. Like through my grace, I'm called you to that. It's still part of the picture, but that's not your strength zone. That's not your niche in this season. And so I had to work through that. I had to give that back to him and really refocus my mind, because we're going to talk about the process our mind goes through even when we're disappointed in our niche, and how we need to accept how God has made us to be. A niche it's an intersection of your passion, your strength, and your lived experience. So what do you do naturally is usually your niche. What are you passionate about? What have you been experienced in? It's not going to be this outside element that you all of a sudden interject with your life. It's going to be a part of you. Your niche comes out of you. And so understanding that it's the place where your story meets somebody else's need. So the story of who you are meets a need that the world has. And if you think about that, that's the very definition of your God-given purpose. Your story providing a need to the world that we're currently living in. And that could be, on a minute scale with the people who are directly around you, to your church family, to the world at large. Like, what is your contribution, basically, is what it's saying here, is what your niche is, what only you can put your secret sauce to add to the world. And the last thing is the lane where things feel lighter, clearer, and more fruitful. And I want you to hear that, because that goes along with that word that everything gets easier. It's the lane that you operate in where things feel lighter, clearer, and more fruitful. There's been seasons in my life that I thought I was operating in my niche, but things still felt hard. It still felt like I was plowing. Maybe I was seeing a little bit of fruit here and there, but it wasn't the fruit that I believed the Lord wanted to bring me in that season of my life. And so I don't want you to box this conversation in. Once again, I'm talking about ministry, but this could be, for your job. This could be your family. It's for your life in general, finding your niche or your strength zone. So simply put, a niche is where you feel most helpful and the most yourself. The most yourself. You don't have to try to be somebody else. That's why it becomes easy. That's why there's a grace to it. You're not trying to put on. You're not striving. You're just being. You're excelling in the grace of God that's on your life. Romans 12:6 says, we have different gifts according to the grace given to us. So there's a grace that's on us already, and then there's gifts given to us according to that grace. And your niche is finding those gifts out, discovering them, and then operating in the grace that's already on your life to walk in those gifts. So, all right, hopefully you're sticking with me here. Why is a niche so hard to find? Why is it so hard to discover our niche? Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the only one that's an overthinker or an over-strategizer. And I'm like, man, if I could just find my niche. And let's be honest, it's a real thing. Like, we all overcomplicate. We all overthink. If you're a mother or a friend or even a wife, it's easy to see strengths on other people. It's easy for me to look at my kids and be like, look, this is what you're really good at. Like if you would just put all of your energy into this, you would really excel. Or maybe a friend, a friend is like, I'm not good at anything. And you're like, are you kidding me? Like, let me pull out 5 or 10 things that you're actually like amazing at. Or your husband or your spouse, you want to be like, don't be so hard on yourself. Like you're really good at these areas. It's because we tend to overlook the things that we're good at, and we tend to overemphasize the things that maybe we're not so good at. And so it's understanding that we are naturally hard on ourselves, so it's naturally harder to identify our niche. Some of the reasons are that we're multi-passionate, right? We're passionate about a lot of things, and we think that if we choose one thing to really focus on, that we're going to forfeit all of the others. That's the space that I was in. That's the mental space I was in. I was like, okay, Lord, if you're calling me to be specific in this area, I feel like I can't do all the other things that I love. I mean, we're created, especially women, as like complex creatures, right? We can do lots of things. You enjoy doing lots of things. Like there's lots of things that I could do. I enjoy decorating. I enjoy fashion. I enjoy health. I enjoy obviously preaching the word. I enjoy leadership principles. I enjoy organizing and planning and getting people's lives in order. I love coaching. So I just named several things that I enjoy doing. And if it was my own decision, I could go down any of those paths and start a business and I would enjoy it. But it wouldn't be maybe specifically what I'm called to. It wouldn't be my strength area, the lane of grace for this season in my life. So sometimes we look at that and we say, I don't want to commit to one thing because I don't want to forfeit the other things. Does that mean I can't decorate? Does that mean I can't preach the word? Does that mean I can't do all these other things if I say, no, I'm going to lean into this focus, this lane of grace for this year? Number 2 reason we don't is because we're constantly evolving. What fit 5 years ago might not fit you now, and that's okay. So we're constantly evolving. So we're afraid to lock into something because, like I said, we don't want to get stuck with a label. We don't want to get stuck being the exercise lady or, whatever it is. We don't want to be labeled for life. But it's an understanding that we're all evolving, and it's never too late. This is so beautiful, to reinvent yourself. It's never too late to say, God, what are you doing in me now? Even the vision that you had 5 years ago, it might not be relevant to where you're at today. So it's good to constantly reevaluate those things. You're not going to get stuck. So don't be afraid that you can't evolve and you can't change if you operate in your niche. Number 3 is comparison confuses clarity. Comparison confuses clarity. So we start defining our lane or our grace and comparing our grace to what somebody else's is. We're like, you know what? I don't want to do this. I want to do that. And so we try to impose ourselves into somebody else's grace or lane because we've been comparing ourselves. And that's a great reason that we don't start. That's a great reason we don't excel in what God has called us to do. We don't give ourselves permission to just go for it and run with what God has called us to this year. And number 4 is fear of performance. We're afraid that choosing today locks us into forever. That if I make a decision to do something today, if I feel like God's called me, maybe it's to start a Bible study this year. You're like, well, I couldn't do it this year, but I'm afraid that I'm going to have to do that forever. No, you have to discern your seasons. Part of operating in your grace is discerning the season that God has you in. And so understanding that is so helpful. It stops us from overanalyzing, and it starts us to move in the grace and the focus of God. So remembering this, that clarity actually comes from movement, not from perfection. Clarity comes from movement, not from perfection. So many times is when I start walking forward and what I feel like God is revealing to me, that then the picture gets clearer. Then I start to see, I start to flow. But if I'm just waiting and I'm like, you know what, I don't like that. I don't think I'm great at that. I don't want to be stuck in that. Then we're never going to get the clarity to go and move forward. 80% of the decisions that you will make will be on knowledge, understanding, data, things that you should do. And 20% of your decisions will always be a step of faith. If we are 100% sure about what our lane of grace is, about what our focus is, about even what your word of the year is or your goals, like going into that year, I'm saying, Lord, like I'm feeling like these are my goals. But it's a 20% step of faith. Like I know that you'll show me if I need to adjust things. I'm not 100%. I'm not 100% because I still need to lean on you in faith. If I were 100%, I would be like, thanks God for my plan. I don't need you the rest of the year. That 20% keeps me leaning on him. Thanks for listening to the Joie Miller podcast. I have a question for you, though. Have you checked out joiemiller.co? It is the landing page for all of our devotionals, for all of the blogs that I've written. It's just a great way to stay encouraged in your faith. So check it out today and see what you think at joiemiller.co. So we're going to walk through some practical ways that you can learn to uncover your niche or your space of grace or your strength zone, whatever you want to call it today. But we're going to walk through some questions that we can answer. Number one is pay attention. Pay attention. What are the questions people ask you on a regular basis? What do they ask you? Do they come to you for mothering advice, for how to cook? Do they ask you how to clean your house? Do they ask you how to organize? Do they ask you for business advice? Maybe it's spiritual guidance. What are people constantly asking you for? Number two is the advice that you give without thinking. Like if somebody asks you a question and it just rolls off of you, you're like, oh, that's the answer. Like, let me talk to you for a while about this answer. The advice that just flows from you. So you're not trying to put it on. You're not trying to get in a headspace of what would so-and-so say, or does this sound smart? It's flowing from you. It's just in you. So that's one way. What advice do you give without even thinking? Number three, the problems that you naturally help solve. What are the problems that you are just natural at? I was talking to somebody recently and I said, even when it comes to planning and structuring life, it's hard for me to teach those things in some aspect because it's like breathing. Like I have to go back. It would be like telling me to teach me how to breathe. Like you're like, I don't know how to teach you how to breathe. It's just something that you do. It's just a natural function of your body. And that's how it feels for me with planning and structuring and strategizing and organizing and getting life in order. It just is something that I do. And so that's kind of how it is. What are the things that you just do without thinking about it that other people are like, wait, how do you do that? Like, that's not natural to me. That's a clue to maybe what your strength zone is. And so your niche often hides in what feels very normal to you because that's how God created you. And that's another reason why we can overlook it because we're like, that's nothing special. Everybody can breathe, right? Everybody can organize. What do you mean everybody doesn't know that? What? I don't even understand how, can't comprehend that. That's because it's normal to you. And oftentimes we discredit our niche or our gifting or our strength zone because we think it's just normal. So your credibility doesn't come from just knowledge, but from being honest and experienced. So there's a God-given experience. Remember your life story, what you've been through, that actually puts that special sauce on your life to add contribution to the world around you. So ask yourself this. Number two, what have you lived, learned, or overcome? That's another hint to your niche. What have you lived? What has your life story been? What have you been through? Maybe you've had a hard childhood. Maybe you got married early. Maybe you went to college and then the Lord redirected your path. What have you lived? What have you learned? What are some experiences that have shaped you? I went to a regular college for a year, and then the Lord called me into ministry, and I went into a ministry school, and they were experiencing a powerful move of God. Those things shaped me. The transition between college and ministry and calling shaped me. There's things that I've lived, and there's things that I've learned that now add to the secret sauce of who I am and what I can add to the world. And then we have to ask ourselves this. We have to say, what have I learned not only through life, but what have I learned through some hard experiences? What are some lessons that maybe I would look at my life and say, that was a challenge, but I learned from it. That was a hard season of my life, but this is what I got out of it. For me, one of my hard lessons that I've had to learn through life has been dealing with different relationships and people, and overcoming hurt, and overcoming bitterness, and overcoming feeling sorry for myself. And from that, though, I get a really unique perspective on relationships. So that's one of the things that I love to teach is relational health, and how to overcome what the enemy tries to do in the area of relationships. And so it's something that I've had to learn the hard way, yet because I have learned, now when I give advice on it or when I teach on it, it flows from me. It's a lived experience that I've learned through a difficult situation. And so, you can start to steward your pain towards the platform that God actually wants to give you, but only after you have victory over it. If you don't, if you get up in the middle of your pain, in the middle of your hard lesson, pretty much you're probably just going to be bleeding on everybody that you're giving advice to or sharing. You're just going to be talking about how hard life is. But after you have the victory, God wants to use that pain as a platform in your life. All right. Number 3 is the third question is, what energizes you even when it requires effort? What energizes you even when it requires effort? Not what's easiest, but what's life-giving. And so, when you're operating in your strength zone, the passion that you have, it rejuvenates you. You could be doing something for 8 hours and you're like, wow, that felt like 10 minutes. It was still work, but there was an ease about it. Do you get what I'm saying? And then everything got easier. There was just an ease. There's a grace flow on your life. So what conversations make time disappear? What's a topic that if you're sitting down with a friend and you're just talking, that all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, that was like an hour later. It felt like 10 minutes went by, but it was like an hour. Start to take note of what are the topics that I'm passionate about. What topics light me up? Do I get excited about? Like, you could be at a dinner party and it could be boring, and maybe somebody brings up your kids and you just light up when you talk about homeschooling or healthy eating or whatever that is. You just light up inside. Maybe when you're a Bible study and an aspect of the Word of God comes forth and you're like, hey, yes, that's my topic. I love to talk about that. Take note of what those topics are. And then what would you still care about without applause? Like, if nobody ever recognized your efforts, what would you still care about? Like, would you still serve in the children's ministry if nobody saw you? Like, would you still cut the papers out for your kid's school teacher if you never got a thanks? Like, what are the things that you would just do because they naturally give you some sort of gratification? There's something on the inside of you that feels full whenever that thing happens. There's moments when I'm teaching or preaching from the platform where I'm like, this is what I've meant to do. You could feel the favor of God upon your life. You're like, this is why I was created. And so there's going to be moments that you tap into, and it doesn't have to be big moments. A lot of times we get stuck in thinking it's the big things. It is the little, when you start to live in your strength zone, the little everyday things start to have so much more meaning and fulfillment. That's why you can be a stay-at-home mom and live so fulfilled in the season that you're in, because you're in your season of grace. I met with a woman and she said, I feel like I'm not doing anything. She said, I'm a stay-at-home mom, I'm homeschooling my kids, and I just want to do more. I want to tap into my purpose. You talk about purpose, I feel like I'm not hitting my purpose. And I said, whoa. What do you feel like God is speaking to you right now? And she said, I feel like I'm in a season of discipleship and growing and relearning everything. I'm a new Christian. And I said, well, that is your purpose. That is what you're to be doing in this season. That's your lane of grace that you're to be operating in the now. So don't dismiss things that seem like they're little just because they're small. God works in those things. All right, let's talk about faith and niche, that God actually cares about your focus. Because if you take the God factor out, this would just be a great leadership lesson or a great TED talk. But there is a faith element that when we add to our niche, we see that God cares about it. There is a faith shift that changes everything. It gives us fresh momentum. It gives us a fruitful year like we've never had before. 1 Thessalonians 4:11 says, make it your ambition to lead a quiet life, not to mind your own business, and to work with your hands. And so 1 Thessalonians is telling us here, our ambition, our focus should be to tend to our own lives, to mind our own business, to stick to our own calling, right? Some of you, that's a word for you. Mind your own business. Mind your own calling. Mind your own giftings. Don't get your head space in somebody else's business. What they're doing is not your business. If they're having a great year and you're jealous, that's good. That's none of your business. Stay focused on what God has called you to do and work with your hands. Diligently work towards what God has given. God is a God of order, intentionality, and assignment. And he's not trying to hide it from you. He actually wants to reveal it to you. And there's a peace when you stay in your lane. And so when you understand that, you understand that finding a niche isn't just like a nice idea. It's actually something that should be a conviction to us, because it's part of stewarding the life God has given us, stewarding the year he's given us, stewarding the people around us in the best way, because you're here on purpose. You're created by God for a purpose, on purpose, so with a purpose. So the way he's created you, the niche, the God giftings within you are specific, and there is something he wants to do in and through you this year, and he wants to make it easy. Stop striving. When you're aligned with God, you don't strive. You don't try to make it happen. Trust me, I've been in seasons where I've tried to push and push and push and make it happen. And it wasn't because my heart was bad or because, I was doing things out of selfish ambition. I really wanted to please God, but I wasn't in alignment with hearing what he wanted in that season. So we have to stay in alignment, and we'll stop striving. We'll stop comparing. We'll stop explaining ourselves to each other. And then things just seem to feel easier. So let's talk about, really quickly, we're wrapping this up. I hope you're taking this serious. You're saying, God, what is my strength zone? Because I want to run with ease. I want this to be the year that things got easier in my life. Well, how can I walk that out practically, right? Because we hear that word. When I heard that word, I'm like, yes, the year that everything got easier. And the Holy Spirit was like, yes, but it's only going to get easier if you apply these principles to your life. It's not for everybody. It's for people who are willing to press in and hear what the Lord's saying and operate in that strength zone or that lane of grace this year. So practical steps. It's not hard though. It's not hard. Don't put the pressure on. It's not hard. How to move forward without pressure. Number one is this: name your current season's niche. Name it. It's not forever. It's a current season. So you don't have to say, okay, I'm committing to this. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom forever. That's my niche. That's my season. If I do this, I'm stuck. No, just give yourself permission to be in the now. Say right now, the beginning of this year, or wherever you're at in the year when you're listening to this podcast, saying this month, this week, this is what my niche is that I'm focusing on. And I'll reevaluate it. I'll go to the Lord and say, is my focus still in the right place in a month from now, in 2 months from now? And I know that if I'm in my lane of grace, God will speak to me if I need to change lanes or if I need to pivot in that moment. But it's not forever. It's just now. Number two is test it, don't announce it. So just start to operate in it. You don't need to go on Instagram and be like, I am now a health guru. Like, that's where I'm going to focus. That's what God's called me to do this year. No, just start to test it. Start to move out in it. Start to exercise that thing that you feel like you're naturally good at in your life. Number three, let feedback refine you. Let feedback refine you. Fruit comes from focus. So if you are focused on one area and you start to see more fruit, then you're going to be like, oh, that's my niche. I'm onto something here. That's what happened to me in October when I started to operate in what I felt like the Lord was saying was my niche. What seemed like fruit before was now multiplied fruit, where it was like I would have a little bit of fruit. Now it was a multiplied fruit because I was in a certain niche or strength zone or lane of grace, and it gave multiplied fruit. So start to exercise it. When you start to operate in it, are you feeling like you're getting better feedback? Are you feeling more peace? Are you feeling more fulfilled? Are you feeling like things are just easier in your life? Number four, give yourself permission to evolve. Growth doesn't mean you were wrong before. So if you're like, well, I thought that was my strength zone, but now I feel like something's different. Am I wishy-washy? Am I not hearing from God? No, you're just growing. And so you grow in the grace of God. And so as you grow in that grace, some seasons are going to look different than others. And, let me just say this. One of the biggest benefits of being a child with God is you can go to him and discern the season that you're in. Like I said before, don't stick yourself to one season or one way. Just know what the way is for today, the now way, the now word that he's talking to you about for this year. So God cares about your life. He wants you to have peace. He doesn't want you to feel drained all the time. He wants you to excel in the things that he has called you to. So give yourself that permission to evolve. Clarity compounds over time. So a lot of times, the longer that you do it, the more clarity that you're going to have in it. And as you start to see the fruit, even you're going to be like, wow, this is really cool. That's something that is just a part of me that I'm really used to, or I'm natural at. It's actually really neat that people value it. So you'll start to see a compounded clarity that comes from that as well. So as we're wrapping up today, I want to encourage you to lean into your strength zone. Start to examine, like, what are the things that God has called me to focus on this year? What is my lane of grace? What is my anointing for this particular year? And as I walk in it, I know I'm going to see God do amazing things. The year that everything got easier, not for lack of obstacles, but because God is in it. He's going before you, and there is a grace to overwhelm every obstacle that comes in your life. Listen, if you know somebody who feels overwhelmed, who doesn't know where to focus this year, maybe who feels like there's nothing good ahead of them, share this podcast with them. Help them connect to their purpose. And until next time, I'll see you on the Joie Miller podcast.